talking about Biden's COVID relief. He calls it a stimulus. It's not stimulative, therefore it's not a stimulus. He writes, I now have an inkling of how the French must have felt when Allied troops liberated Paris in August of 1944. Things were terrible. There was wreckage all around, and yet a sense of optimism must have been pervasive. Right. The inauguration of Joe Biden today is akin to the Allied troops liberating Paris in August of 1944. Boy, how the Ivy League has fallen. He goes on to say on the matters which he supposedly is an expert, economics, go big. Mr. Biden's American Rescue Plan is more than twice as large as the $900 billion plus package Congress finally cobbled together in December. The president-elect called the measure a down payment, and we now see that he meant what he said. Biden's proposal to increase from $300 a week to $400 a week the unemployment benefits through September and then phase out as the labor market improves are wise. Team Biden got all the big things right, writes Professor Blinder. And he also suggests that the aid to state and local governments is sorely needed, quote unquote. More than 1 million people have been laid off from government, according to him. And Mr. Biden must win this fight to get all of those government employees back on the job in government. For more on this, because I read a piece from our next guest on Fox News, he begs to differ with Professor Blinder. Steve Moore, economist, Wall Street Journal columnist, author of Trumponomics. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, guys. By the way, I am just outside of Andrews Air Force Base. I'm going to see still President Trump for another couple of hours off as he leaves for Florida. I don't. It's so funny you should read that quote from Blinder because, obviously I'm a Trump guy, but to me it feels more like an occupation rather than a liberation. This is going to be. Well, let me put it like this: anybody who thought that voting for Joe Biden, including, I have relatives and friends who are kind of moderates who thought, oh, it'll be just fine. He's going to be lunch bucket Joe. He'll be that moderate centrist Democrat. Folks, this is not going to be a moderate centrist administration. We've already seen, one dingbat policy after another. And by the $1.9 trillion stimulus bill that you're talking about, it comes on the heels of $900 billion, as you were just mentioning, that Trump signed. The record will show that I was not in favor of the $900 billion, and I'm certainly not in favor of $1.9 trillion. There is a superstition, a kind of mysticism in economics that all we have to do is just keep spending and borrowing money and everything's going to be all right. So, $3 trillion, that should do it, Dan. I mean, we should be out of this crisis with $3 trillion.
Yeah. Well, before we get into hard news here, I'm a girl here. So where are you meeting President Trump? Because he's delivering his departure. He's at his departure ceremony right now, speaking to the crowd. Where exactly are you? And where are you going to meet him for breakfast, or are you going to go on Air Force One?
No.
And who are you wearing today?
I'm over at
Dolce Gabbana.
I'm over at Andrews Air Force Base, but I had to get out of the crowd because I wanted to do this show. But it's a kind of a sad occasion, and so we will, for me at least. But I'm going to continue to say that I do not defend this president's behavior since Election Day. I cannot. But I think his economic record has been really very, very solid. And this economy, if Joe Biden called me and said, yeah, Steve, he's not going to do this, but if he did, what do you think I should do to help the economy? You know what I tell him? Just get out of the way. Just this economy is primed up for a huge, huge growth in 2021. We've got the vaccine coming. I do like that. I do like Joe Biden's idea of 100 million vaccines in 100 days. I think that's a great idea. But Dan and Amy, that can only be done by getting the government out of the way. Let the private pharmacists, let the private hospitals, let the private drug companies do it. But, of course, he wants a big government bureaucratic program.
Well, we're going to have the Illinois National Guard and hand out vaccine doses. I'd rather have my pharmacist or my doctor do it than somebody from the Illinois National Guard.
Absolutely. I totally agree. By the way, let me just say one thing about that, Amy, because it's a really important point. People have to understand what Operation Warp Speed was, because this is a spectacular achievement. I do think this is one of the great achievements since D-Day. And the fact is, it was not a government program, folks. What Trump did is he basically told the private companies, go at it. Told Pfizer and these other big drug companies, go at it. Get the vaccine. It was a race to see who could get it done. And yes, they had a profit motive. I know, Dan, that makes you cringe.
Oh, yes.
But they had a profit
Terrible.
motive. And they went out and they did it. And it was getting around all the regulations of the FDA and the NIH and the HHS. That's how this got done. So I'm just worried that people think this was some kind of successful government bureaucratic program. It wasn't. It was the opposite of that.
I just want to get your take on. I know modern monetary theory tells us that the Fed is omnipotent and omniscient, and Jay Powell said there's nothing that could blow up this expansion. Zero rates will be in place for a long time. You don't have any concern that we may be heading over a cliff the way we did in advance of 2008. The difference is we just don't know when quite yet.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad you asked that question because I want to be crystal clear about what I meant to say. What I meant to say is if we just stop spending money and get the government out of the way, then I think the economy is really teed up. You've got pent-up demand. You've got businesses that are ready to get back on their feet. You know, people will start traveling again. They'll go to hotels again. By the way, I was in Florida this past weekend, guys. I know you're going to be jealous, but everything was open.
Yes.
I mean, you can't.
We know.
Not only are the restaurants open, you can't even get a reservation for a restaurant. I mean, I actually confronted a traffic jam in California. That's like the good old days. So, you've got a lot of states that are open. But what I'm saying is, if Biden were just to do nothing and let the virus be conquered by the vaccine and just don't spend 1.9 trillion. By the way, Casey Mulligan, he's at the University of Chicago. He and I have a study out suggesting that if the Biden plan passes, Blinder, but we believe that bill will cost the economy 5 million jobs because it actually gives money for free to people for not working. It also extends unemployment benefits and gives them $400 an extra payment per week. 64% of workers who are now unemployed are getting more money now under the Biden plan for not working than returning to work. Do you think people are going to return to work?
Well, not only that, it also extends the forbearance on evictions and foreclosures to September.
Yep. By the way, that means, of course, I have some friends who own apartment buildings.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as they announce things, guess what people stop doing?
Paying
the
rent.
But they
Paying
still have to
rent.
pay the mortgage on the
People
buildings
aren't
that they
stupid.
own, and nobody cares about them because they're evil landlords. I mean, they're just trying to make a living.
Exactly. So, my two friends who own apartment buildings, they're doing pretty well, but they're not rich. But guess what? If people stop paying the rent, then they don't have the payment to pay the mortgage, so the bank doesn't have the money. And politicians, do they really think Americans are that stupid?
Well,
I mean, economics is all about incentives. If you pay people not to pay the rent, they're not going to pay the rent. If you pay people not to work, they're not going to work. It's like there's a collective amnesia among economists that somehow all you have to do is pay people money and give them free money. And the idea in Washington, by the way, Dan and Amy, these days is the only shortage we have to worry about right now is running out of paper and ink to print all the bills we're going to print.
Well, so here's the thing, though. So let's talk about what is likely to happen based on what is likely to happen rather than what we could have if the Biden administration did something it's not going to do. So we're talking about his $2 trillion relief plan and those component parts. We're talking about a return to the Paris climate deal. We're talking about stopping the Keystone XL pipeline. We're talking about the right to housing. We're talking about student debt loan forgiveness. So if those things come to pass, now what are we looking at in 2021 and beyond?
It's a good question. I mean, I do think that even if Biden screws everything up, I think we're still going to have a pretty decent 2021 because I just think the economy's primed up. I mean, the vaccine is the stimulus. And so, it's a question whether we're going to get, 3 or 4% growth or, we could get 8 to 10% growth in 2021. We had almost 10% growth in the fourth quarter of 2020, even before the vaccine hit. So we have an incredibly resilient economy, and you can't discount the resiliency of our small businessmen and women who've kept their head above water, even though the government keeps trying to plunge it below water. So I do think 2021 is looking pretty good. I would not be buying stocks right now. I think stock prices are ridiculously high. I don't get it. I don't get the wild optimism. And I agree with Steve Forbes. This has to do with your point about inflation. I do think have you noticed, I don't know, are gas prices rising there in Illinois?
Oh, like 40 cents overnight, just like that.
Yep, it's happening here too in Virginia where I live. I mean, gas prices are rising. By the way, if you shut down oil and gas supply, folks, guess what happens to the gasoline price?
They're going to go up.
So we're going to see, I think I just think 22 and 20, the more medium term looks bad as these policies start to take place. Look, there's an old saying in economics, debts have to be repaid. And this idea we can just borrow our way to nirvana. I mean, is there anybody who really believes that? Well,
yeah.
I guess
Joe Biden, who famously said during the Obama administration, he famously said we have to keep spending to prevent from going bankrupt. That's who believes it.
Stephen Moore, what are your parting words for President Trump when you meet with him in a few minutes?
You were an amazing. Your economic program was amazing success. It worked better than Larry Kudlow and I and others thought it would. And it's a really interesting question about what Donald Trump is going to do right now. There is some talk of him forming a third party, which would be bad, obviously, for the Republicans. I think he is a Shakespearean tragic figure. I mean, he blew himself up on January 6th. I think the American people will not forgive him for that. But he will still be a voice for sure. And he still will be. And as Biden's policies fail, I do think there will be people saying, hey, this isn't a liberation. Hey, Homelander, you had it wrong. This is no liberation. It is going to feel like an occupation of left wingers. And we'll see. Look, I hope I'm wrong. I know we got to go, but I'll just say this in closing. I wish this new president the best. I put America first, and I hope that his policies succeed. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we can borrow our way to prosperity.
Steve Moore, economist, Wall Street Journal columnist, author of Trumponomics. Please say hey to Jared for Amy while you're out there, would you?
All right, will do, guys. Have a great week.
All right, you too. Thank you so much, as always. And he joined us on our Turnkey.pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, I'm Jim Boyd, here to tell you about an incredible cost-saving opportunity you should consider for your building, office, or facility. For 30 years, Boyd Electric has been a local 134 electrical contractor providing quality service and technology. We help businesses large and small reap the benefits of energy-efficient lighting products. Boyd Electric has retrofitted hotels, big box stores, hospitals, and car dealerships, and is a total solutions provider that can serve your needs anywhere in the country. With our no capital outlay shared savings program, you can get 100% financing with customer payments based on an agreed upon share of realized energy savings. Once the balance is paid off, you own the equipment and retain the energy savings. Our partnership with manufacturers and our association with ComEd's energy efficiency programs provides you access to products and programs designed specifically to make upgrading your lighting plan an affordable cost-saving option. Boyd Electric, the experience to retrofit your business with the finest LED alternatives. Contact me, Jim Boyd, at 708-952-4500.
For years, you've heard the familiar name of Turnkey IT. They've told their story about successfully providing IT solutions for hundreds of Chicagoland businesses, many of which are also supporters of AM 560. It's so important to stick together right now. But now Turnkey turns a new chapter in their business, Turnkey Consulting. Turnkey Consulting came out of the need for so many small businesses looking for help